In this video, what I want to do is try to go through as quickly as I possible the modification of this file that you see right over here on this screen. This is a picture from a Facebook image of a person that was looking for some help, and he was struggling with how to go about getting this logo, this Marines logo here, so that it wasn't getting sunken into the ashtray. And he had tried a few different ways, and he was getting different advice on how he might go about doing that. And so I reached out to him and said, can I help you out and see what I can do to help you understand what you need to do? And he said, yeah, give me a helping hand. And I said, send me the file and we'll see what we can do. So that's what this video is about. To get this to the point, what he really wants to see is something like this. So in the end, what he wants is a picture with the ashtray. This is an ashtray, a nice flat bottom, and the logo sticking up in the bottom of that. And so that's what I told him I'd help him achieve. So that's what this video is about. And if you want to learn how I go about doing that, then stick around. This is a file that the person sent me. It's a cigar tray. Let's take a look at the different components. You have the toolpaths over here. He's got one for holders. And holders, if you look at it, that's going to be these various cigar holders. And all he's got here is a rectangle. And what he did to do that was he went with a ball nose, which isn't a bad choice, 1/2 inch. That's pretty good sized ball nose. I guess he has one of those. And he just went to the rectangle, 0.75 to the pocket depth. And he used an offset. I wouldn't have chosen an offset if I was doing this. I would have chosen a raster toolpath probably. But it doesn't matter. Raster will work fine. He ramped and moves in there. And the result of that toolpath, let me hit close here and come over here, and we're going to take off the reset the preview. The result of that toolpath then is that he has preview the selected toolpath. He has these cigar holes. So the next toolpath that he developed was this 3D roughing pass. And if you go look at the 3D roughing pass, let's open that up. He's got the material boundary, which is good. It'll take everything away from the material. And he's using a 1/4 inch Jenny compression bit, and that will work. I would probably use some different bits, but if he's got a 1/4 inch and he doesn't have the other bits I would use, which would be roughing bits, then, or I would also use a 1/4 inch ball nose in some cases. So again, he's got the material boundary, 0.04, everything looks good. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I shouldn't have hit calculate because I want to use his original toolpath. Hit preview visible. That means I'm previewing the one with the check in it. And as you can see, that gives you your roughing pass. And then we're going to go to a 3D finishing pass. So let me go to his 3D finishing pass. He's using a tapered ball nose, 5.4 degree tip. So that's a pretty small tip on that. And that means it'll carve very finely. So that's a good choice for the detail that he wants in this model. He's going to go to the model boundary, and then he's going to use a raster toolpath on that, and he's going to go 0.0 degrees, which means we should see it go across this way. And because he's doing the model boundary, let's take a look at his model real quickly. I'm going to hit close here for a second. So let's take a look at his model. His model, if we go to the component tree, consists of, the first thing he's done is he's made a flat circle. So we'll go over here to 3D view. So he's got a flat circle there. It doesn't look like it has much height. Let me take a look at that. See what he's got. He's got zero. He's actually got it at minus 1.074. 0.774. I think that's because he's trying to get it down into, if we look at the side view of the material, here's the modeling plane right here. And I think what he's trying to do is get it down into below the modeling plane so he can get that circle to carve way down there. And that's one way to do it. There's a couple different ways. I think he's making it more complicated than he needs to, and it's not unusual when you're just first getting started. He said he was getting started, so that's why I offered to help. So let's take a look at the next part of the model. That's this component 1, and once again, that's another flat plane, but this one is actually on top of the model. I'm not sure what he's trying to accomplish with that. And then the last thing he has in the model is this logo, this Fleet Marine Force that he's actually trying to get to carve. And this is what he wants to sit on top. So the way he's got the model is you start from the bottom. When you're building a model, you start from the bottom, and he's got this down here below the surface, which is what he wants for the ashtray. Then he's got this one right here. I'm not quite sure what that one is doing, to be honest with you. And then he's got this one here, which is sitting on top. And he's thinking, okay, everything should carve just fine if he goes about that. But recognize that this logo, it is merged. So that is probably what he wants, because then he can raise it up on the top. And he's got it set at a negative number for the base. And if you go look at what his final model looks like, and we click these right here, and we look at what his model is going to look like, remember we've already cut these two. His finish bit is going to be right here. And remember, it's 0 degrees, it's going across, preview visible. And I noticed right away that that really doesn't look like the picture that was on his Facebook page. Here's the one that was on his Facebook page, and you see now, with whatever he's done to the toolpaths in between, he got rid of this part. But now what you see, if you look at it, let's go up close again, is you see that he's got all of these chatter marks around the outside, and he also has it sunken down on the outside ring. So let's do the last one he has, which is his profile. And I think that he was trying to clean up this outer edge with that profile, preview visible. And he does. He cleans up that outer edge with that profile cut, but now he's got an even more deeper ring around the outside. And remember, what he wants is a nice flat transition. So let's go through some of the recommendations that I would provide him to get to that point. And the best way to do that, I think, is to start from the beginning, because what he really, how he set this up made it a little more complex with using those negative base numbers. And I see what he was trying to do. He was trying to bring it down, but there's an easier way to do that. So I'm going to take a couple of these components. I'm going to make a new sheet so I don't change his file. So I'm going to come up here, add a sheet. And in that sheet, I'm going to rename it Rob's Suggestion. All right. And I'm going to take that sheet and I'm going to go back to the other sheet real quick. Sheet 1. And I'm going to take his model. I'm going to close this so I can see his model. I'm going to click on his model. I'm going to right click and I'm going to say copy to, I don't want to change anything he's done so you can see the differences, to Rob's Suggestions. Let me turn on these vectors because this gives me a good picture. Let me take his model off. This gives me a good picture of all of the different elements that he's going to want to have in his final ashtray. So I'm going to take and copy these vectors. I'm going to right click now and I'm going to hit copy to Rob's Suggestions. And I'm not quite sure what each of these vectors are, but I think this vector was his original model. So if I turn on his flat round, let me go to top here. If I turn on his flat round, you can see that covers out to that vector. And this component goes out to this vector. And I think that might have had something to what he was trying to do with that profile bit. So let's take a look. What you're looking at now is the Rob Suggestion sheet that I copied everything over to. So let's take a look at what I copied over. Remember, this is the modeling plane currently. And you can see these vectors for the holders of the cigars. And then you can see these vectors right here. And I'm going to assume this inner vector is the amount that he wants for his cigar tray. It's basically an ashtray. And let me turn this upward so we can see it at a different angle. And this other vector was the one he did the profile. So it might be where he wants it. So if he wants to change it later, after we walk through this with him, he can go ahead and change it out to this vector if he wants to. One of the other things you'll notice is it copied the model over with the properties. It copied the component over with the properties that he originally had in there. So let's take a look at those properties. Double clicked on it, and you can see that the shape height itself is 0.2809, which is what I think he wants. but his base height, which is how he was trying to put it down there, was minus 1.2592. And I'm going to just copy that for a second, but I'm going to get rid of that 0. And I don't think I needed a copy of it. And what you see is the model then moved up to the plane, and the shape height is now 0.2809. Now we're starting from scratch, basically, other than his cigar holders. And so let me go ahead and show how I would address the model initially. And I want to come back over here real quick. And it says 0.2809. That's how high the model is. And I'm going to assume that's what he wants. And I'm going to copy that. So I put Control-C or Command-C if you're using a Windows computer. The first thing I want to do is come over here to the set. And you'll notice he's got his thickness of his material at 2.5 inches. Lower left corner, material surface, everything looks good. But if we look here, he's got his gap above model at 0.0. And what he really wants is this to be 1.5 inches down. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to say that the gap above the model is going to be 1.5 minus Control V. And if I look at that formula, 1.5 is the total depth, and then he wants the model. So I want to make sure that the depth is such that the model will go right, carve right into it. And I think it'll become clear. And I may have to do plus 2.2809. I may have my math wrong, but we're going to check it out. So now that is the new gap. I'm going to hit equal. And then you will see if I hit OK that the model itself is going to actually be carved down below. Come back over here so it's easier to see. You can see the model is actually going to be carved down here 1.5 inches deep, and with the thickness of the model included, it should be 1.5, but I may have done the math wrong. We'll see in just a second. Hit OK. So now we're set up. One of the things that probably isn't going to change in my recommendations, because I'm just going to focus on the model part, is the holders. So I'm going to bring the holders. I'm going to come back over to the other sheet here, and I'm going to bring the toolpath for the holders right here. I'm going to copy that to the Rob sheet. And now that I've got that out of the way, we'll go back to the Rob sheet. And you can see that's there. And because what's happening here is, what this is red check mark means that it still needs to be calculated. So on this one, what I would probably do a little different than what he did is I'll keep his 1/2-inch ball nose. I'll keep the set size right there. Instead of using an offset where it comes in and around, I probably would have, but it's just a personal choice. So his is fine too. But I probably would have done something like this. I probably would have taken this one here and this one here, and I would have made that a raster, and I would make that 90 degrees going with the design of that holder. And I would have hit calculate. And then I would have duplicated this. I would have saved them all to one toolpath, but I would have duplicated it here. And I would have grabbed the vectors here, and they keep turning off every time I leave the toolpath. And I would have used a 0 raster up here versus a 90. Everything else is do the same, calculate. And so that's my holders too. And then I would preview that real quick. And you can see that has the same impact, but they're going with the design of the rectangle. Now, we need to get into the actual model itself. So I'm going to hit Reset Preview. I'm going to hit Close here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to set up the roughing toolpath. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to set up the roughing toolpath. I'm going to use a downcut bit for my roughing toolpath. I could use a hogging bit. Whatever we have, this is the one that I have that's long enough, so I'm just going ahead to use it. And I'm going to select vectors as my boundary. Once I do that, the boundary offset, I want to make this for my roughing toolpath. I'm going to make it about half the distance. So 0.25 times 0.5, which is 0.125 actually. So I'm going to make it 0.125 equal, and I'm going to make that a minus. and I'm going to explain that in just a minute. What I'm trying to do is stop the bit from going too far into the wall, because the roughing bit as it comes up is going to hit this wall. And I want a smooth wall when I get all said and done. So I want to try to make it so that I can use my next bit during my finishing bit to cut into this without creating an issue. So I'm going to use minus 0.125, which is half the width of the roughing bit. And I'm going to go a 3D raster, and I'm going to use 90 degrees, avoid machined areas. That's not really important right now. And then we will call that our 3D roughing. Hit calculate. What you've got is the roughing bit served up, and you can see that it's coming up right to this vector and stopping with that boundary offset that I put in place. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our finishing bit. Now normally I would take this bit right here. This is a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose, and that looks fine to me. He's got a 2.0 inch flute length, so that's plenty. I will go to the selected vectors, and as I come down here, no boundary offset needed for this one. I would be going out here. I might need a little boundary offset. We'll see what it looks like. And instead of a raster, which is what I would normally use, because we're using this circle, and because we've got this enclosed ashtray, I'm going to take a little bit of different method than I would normally make. Because when the roughing bit hits into the edge, there's going to be like little ridges along here. But if I use a raster, or I mean an offset toolpath, it'll start here in the center, and it'll work its way around and around and out, and should make for a nice smooth edge on the outside. Normally that's what I would expect to see, so we'll see how it works. So I'm going to go to the offset toolpath. Conventional normally works fine. If you find the climb works better on your machine, you can use the climb. And the vector, I'm going to hit selector, and I'm going to select the same vector I did with the roughing. If I decide I need a little bit more allowance, I can come back up here for a boundary offset, but for right now I'm going to start with that. And with that said, we got 3D finish. We've got a tapered ball nose up here at 1/8 inch in, and I've got a 32nd inch. And let me remove the 32nd so you can see why I added that. I'm going to remove that. This was his original ball nose. So go back over here. We got offset, conventional, calculate. So now we have the tool paths that we need. So let's go to the preview, and I'm going to preview the roughing tool path first. Preview visible. And this is what I meant by what the roughing toolpath is going to look like, all these little chunky areas. And that's because you haven't got the actual finish toolpath run yet. So now we're going to run the finishing toolpath with a 1/8 inch tapered ball nose. Preview visible. You can see how it's starting in the middle and working its way out, and you can see how it's smoothed out all of those chunky areas. So now what we have is a nice smooth thing that will not need as much sanding. But you can see here that the detail in the Fleet Marine Force is not quite as much detail as I would normally like to have, even in some of these areas. So to get to that detail, I'm going to change this slightly. I'm going to hit close. I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to add a 32nd inch, 1/32nd inch ball nose. I'm going to select that one. Come through, make sure nothing changed on me, hit calculate. And now let's take a look at how this is going to work. So we got the roughing, which is going to go back and forth, up and down. If your grain was going in this direction, then you'd go with the grain over this way, and you would either use a ball nose or a end mill, whichever you feel most comfortable with and like. Then you have the first finishing pass, which is going to start in the middle, and it's going to work its way around and around and around and around. I probably should hit reset preview. It's going to work its way around and around and around until it gets to the outside. And then you have the last finishing tool path, which is only going to focus on that Marine Force logo to try to get in between the letters and make it stand out. So with that, let's go ahead and start the 3D roughing. Preview visible. Then we're going to come down here to the first finish pass. Preview visible. You see how it's starting in the middle and working its way out. And then the last finishing toolpath, we're going to preview that. And you can see how that cleans up that marine force so it looks nice and crisp. And last but not least, and this could have been first or last, we're going to do the cigar holders. And now you have a nice clean bottom and the cigar holders in the place that he wants them. And if he wanted to get a little more fancy, he could have used either a 2-rail sweep. Well, a 2-rail sweep would have probably been the best thing to use since he has a spire for each of these. And then you could have made this more rounded instead of flat on the bottom. And if he wants to know how to do that, I can share that with him after I share this file with him. So with that, we've cleaned up his file, and now I'm going to send this back to him so he can use that and put in the right bits that he has in his tools. Well, that's it. Those are the recommendations I'm making to the gentleman on the Facebook page that I would implement in his file. If you like these kind of videos and you are able to learn from them, please let me know, and I'll do similar videos in the future. The key things that I recommended in this video was a different setup than he was originally providing in his file. You can see that he had gotten pretty close, but wasn't quite getting into the area he needed to. I reduced the number of components that he was using. I also didn't try to manipulate the components by putting a negative base height. And the biggest thing that I did in my recommendations was to go ahead and start the carving at a lower level. If we come over here to the set parameters, let's close this one right here. If we go to set, the biggest change I made in his carving was taking this model and starting it down here. So that was the biggest change I made. One of the key things that you do need to remember if you go down this process is the need for this roughing toolpath, because if you try to carve that deep with the finishing toolpath plunges immediately to the lowest depth of the toolpath. So to make sure that you get the tool depths just right and you don't end up breaking a bit, you need to use the roughing toolpath here. And the roughing toolpath is controlled in its depths of cut by the actual depth of cut. So in this case, this bit here will go down in increments of 0.25 inches. If I needed to be less aggressive, I could change that. Or if I needed to be more aggressive, I could. So remember, that's a key difference also, is when you're using a 3D modeling toolpath, the roughing toolpath will use the depth of pass that is in the bit that is doing the roughing, and a finishing toolpath will not. It will go right to wherever it needs to carve with the depth of cut. So it's important, especially in something that's 1.5 inches deep, to be using a roughing toolpath. With that, I hope you picked up a thing or two. Please comment and let me know if it was worth your while watching. If you like these kind of videos, give me a like, thumbs up, or a comment, and share with others. And until we meet in this environment again, I hope you're out making cool things. With that, have a good day.